I'm Chris Lee. I'm joined by Bruno Reagan tonight. Vanderbilt has had, frankly, a performance I don't think we saw coming, Bruno. Commodores lose that one badly to ETSU in a night that just almost transcends words. The final score was 23-3. I'll be honest, I've seen a lot of bad football covering Vanderbilt, but I did not see that one coming.
Me neither, Chris. I mean, listen, I was really conservative with my picks too on the season. Some people were, saying bowl game, and especially after the results of the Stanford Colorado State game today, some people were like, "Oh, we're looking at 3-0, 4-1," and I'm just like, "Well, pump the brakes. Remember what we had last season. Remember, what we inherited this season. I mean, it's the first game, and frankly, I don't know, it was something worse than Temple we got."
When did you get a sense that this was not going to end well? I mean, they had a rough first quarter, but you kind of brushed that off a little bit. Yeah.
Absolutely. You remember Austin P, I believe it was 2016 or 15. I think they went up 7-0 on us, instantly. And then halfway through the fourth quarter, we didn't score. And we ended up winning like 40-7. So there's definitely, kinks that can be worked out and figured out to where it's, you don't have to hit the panic button. But I think a lot of the issues started to come in after the second, like maybe through the second halfway through the third quarter after the second half. And they just look, drained. And I'm not watching the broadcast. I'm in the press box. But I have people texting me. I'm like, dude, they're on the broadcast, like just, trashing the sideline. There's no energy. It just looks like a bunch of, statues out there. And that's when, you can start to really be like, okay,
yeah,
there's no so. And we got to see later, like, I don't think there was a calculated change with the quarterbacks, and that's an issue. I know Coach Lee was just on the presser saying a few different things, but at the time it seemed like there was no calculation, anything. It was just sporadic throwing paint at the wall and just hoping something sticks.
What did you make of the quarterback thing? I thought that was just a really odd move. Maybe a needless move. I know Ken didn't play well, but it almost seemed like the seeds for something were sown before the game even started tonight. Now, look, both quarterbacks have to go out and play, right? But that just was an odd-seeming thing from the beginning to me.
And Chris, what? I mean, what do we remember about Temple? How many quarterbacks played that day? Was it 3? Patton, Stephen, and McCrary. Like, I don't know what it is with these first games, and then just switching. And then the next year it was Shermer and Freebeck, and everyone's like, why did we do that? And now it's, Wright and Seals. And listen, I'm not objecting to changing the quarterback if you need spark, or maybe I'll think something's better. But if you're gonna get with Ken, you have to be behind the guy. If you're gonna get with Mike Wright, you have to be behind the guy. But Mike Wright, Ken, has struggles. Mike Wright goes in. It's like, okay, now you got to get behind Mike Wright. But then they pull him, and then Ken goes back in, and now these guys, they're just they're off their groove. That maybe it affected their confidence, their decision making. I mean, the team's running, had to have been like 10 different plays because they obviously have different plays for Mike, and I mean it just seemed all over the place.
I think the thing that set the tone for everything was the offensive line, and that was our fear for both of us going into the season. I think that's fair to say.
Yes, I was a little highish on them in the spring in terms of where their development was going, and then before I went to the fall game practices, you told me, you were like, keep an eye on these guys and let me know what you think. And then that's when I started to get a little worrisome. I mean, with even the little we were allowed to report, I could tell the right guard thing was going to be an issue, but I didn't know the rest of the line was going to suffer so badly until we actually got out here at game day. Because we do have some senior guys, some guys that have played some reps, and we have some talented guys. Like Tyler Steen's a talented cat, but 3 penalties, a sack, just mental errors after mental errors. You could be the most talented guy in the world, and it's not going to help you. It's not going to save you.
Did they sub out at line at all tonight?
Not that I could tell. I think Cox played the whole game at right guard. Warden played the whole game at center. I think they did at the O-line what the exact opposite they did at quarterback. They said, this is our O-line, we're going to stick with this game. No other people got reps.
I thought the offense was going to have some struggles. Did I expect 3 points tonight? No. But, I mean, that was clear. We watched a lot of practice. That was not totally unexpected. Now, what I didn't expect was the complete lack of discipline, the penalties, the pre-snap stuff, because we just didn't see that in camp. And I know the lack of energy and things. I think we saw a lot of energy and enthusiasm in camp too. So, the fact that the line didn't play well and the offense couldn't get in rhythm, the fact that that was going to be a problem for this team this year did not surprise me. Now, again, did I expect that tonight? Heck no. But it was the other stuff that was really disturbing that I just cannot get my hands around because, frankly, I think you backed me up on this. That was not part of their identity when we watched them in practice, all the other stuff that just went wrong.
Absolutely no, and I thought this was going to be a lot more disciplined team. And you can look back on my tweets, Chris. Everyone's like, "What do you want to see from the game today?" I say penalties, limit them, please, for the love of God, limit these penalties because it's a controllable. It's something you don't have to be born 6'5" to not go off sides or hold somebody. And in practice, it looked like they were, playing with some discipline, and I was, intrigued by that. And then we get out here, and the lights come on, and then there's, one thing leads to another, and one thing leads to another, and then once the leaders start biting, and as far as the offense goes, I mean, it's not like, listen, Ramon Davis was averaging 3.9, basically 4 yards a rush. That's efficient, but the thing is they ran so many different style of plays. There will be times when we would go back into the locker room and Coach Ludd. Usually we save plays for the second half and break the glass in case you need it. But there'll be some games where it's like we're taking these plays out because they're not working. But all the counters, the gap schemes, the Mike Red specific runs were just all getting, they were all negative yard plays, and that momentum's tough to get back. The offensive line played okay in the zone game, the base zone game, inside zone, outside zone. They were close to hitting some home runs, albeit one block away or a tight end hold away. So there was a little positive in there, but it was just so overshadowed by trying to make, just hopefully they were just looking for some prayer to work.
One other thing, they went tempo early, right? And they moved the ball early, and then they just went away from it. I don't remember why that first drive stalled out, but again, that was a thing that you'd see in the Mason era. Things would work for little spells, and they'd just go away from them. I didn't see a lot of creativity on the offense in terms of motion and stuff like that. There were just some things with the offensive game plan that I didn't get at all.
Exactly, and when sometimes it did work. I tweeted specifically about this one line. I believe it was from the Vanderbilt. They were on the 30-yard line, just about to break into the red zone. They were on the 40-yard line, just about to break into the maroon zone, which is right before the red zone. They line up both their tight ends on the left side, overload side, and then they motion one to the right, and then they run it to the right and cut it behind that last tight end on the left. And I thought that was an extremely impressive design. And then we just don't see it the rest of the game. And that's something they said they were going to focus on. I think it just, I said it earlier, I think it just got down to they were panicked and they just tried they basically called every single play in their playbook once instead of, identifying what was trending and working and what wasn't and adapting. I think it was, I know coaches nowadays have a hard time maybe accepting accountability, but I think it was one of those things where it, might have just not been called well. Not to say it wasn't played well either.
Some folks are asking about video on the stream. We have video on our end. I don't know if that's maybe not making its way through. We had a plan for tonight, Bruno, and it like everything else, it didn't work out. I was supposed to be in the press box with you, and we had a setup, so we had to. We only got one in the press box tonight. That was you, so we had to rig a remote at the last minute. So anyway,
our situation kind of foreshadowed, I guess, everything tonight. Yeah. I don't know how it ended up. You and me were only allowed one to come, but that's what it is. At least people can. What's important is our thoughts. We'll get video on the next week because now we'll just have to assume that one of us is going to be remote the whole time. So we'll get that fixed up. But at least the people can hear, at least to have some words to the madness that they saw.
Right. The other thing. Well, there's a lot of other things.
I know there's a lot.
Well, here's what I'm wondering, okay? I don't think any of us expected this to go that badly. There were some struggles, but again, there was a whole layer of other stuff that I don't think we could have seen coming by watching practice, right? So here's my question. you know how these things go. You played on some teams that took their lumps. You know what it's like to be a competitive athlete. Was this one of those things that just a couple things went wrong? They weren't able to get a touchdown early. ETSU got the ground game going early. Was this one of those things that just spiraled out of control as a team that went 0 for 9 last year and frankly didn't have any reason for confidence coming into this year? Just lost whatever it had. I mean, maybe that is a thing that people like me say to make this make sense, but I'm asking you because you've lived it, and I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are here.
I know. I think it's interesting when you say you lived it. I have a vivid memory of early into my junior season, the season where we didn't go to a bowl game between our bowl games, and we were a really talented roster, and that was a tough season, and our run game was struggling a lot. And I remember Mason basically, I was going to go after him in a press conference, and he just said, the run game's on these guys, and he names me, and because I was the leader, and then he comes out and he tells me, he's like, man, I'm challenging you to grow as a leader and push these guys. And I just think, this is a product no one really wants to stand up on the table and say, I take the blame for this, and I'm going to give it my everything to, change the circumstance. And that can seem like a little thing, but this team desperately needs like an overt leader, someone who is willing to go out there and change, not clamp it to a shell. And that's something we've struggled with, Chris. I've always been critical of the team. It seems like, it's the toughest, it's the hardest thing to get access to is this, practically the second to worst football program in America right now. And, that's something, it just needs to be opened up. They need to accept criticism. They need to open up in all aspects. The players need to, and that's another tough thing. These players have never seen what it's like to have, a win. A lot of these players don't know what it's like to win a single game. And it's tough because they come from good high school programs, get inside, and they're like, oh my gosh, what now? They don't know what that change looks like. And it just takes one person, trying their best to lead the way. At least see some effort doing it, but there's nothing that can excuse tonight, man. Someone's got to stand up and say, we got to be better.
It appears the audience can see the video now. That's on me.
Oh, sweet.
There's 3 little thumbnails in front of me. One of them is a blank screen. One's you and one's me. And funny thing, when you click on the ones with us, that's what the audience sees too. So just been that kind of night. Clark Lee in the press conference, I asked him the question, did you see this coming at some point? Because sometimes in practice when things aren't going well with your preparation,
good question.
Do you kind of know this is coming as a coach? His answer, basically, paraphrasing, was no. So there's that. The penalties were the thing that I think really upset him the most. There's a lot to choose from here. So I don't know. I was asked, change in direction. I've covered a lot of bad games, and you have some too. I think this is the worst loss I've ever seen. Given, as bad as it has been for them at times, they have never lost to an FCS team. And that happened tonight. And not only did it happened by 20 points. It's one of those things that as you watched, it almost didn't feel real. And that's crazy from somebody who's covered a lot of bad football. But it was just, I think it was that big of a shock.
Yeah, and I guess we can, guys, if you're on the Vanderbilt.Sports.com website, we have a thread up. That's how you can, guaranteed interact with the show. I know this is linked to the public. The show's free to the public, but if you want to interact, you can come on this website. And Chris, I had the same question from VU Matt23 on there. Bruno, have you ever been more let down by our program? And the answer is flat out no. This is a 5th grader going up to a senior in high school and just, beating him up in front of everybody. I was texting you out of sheer emotion during the game. Whenever things like this happen, a lot of people text me and I get all worked up. It's definitely rock bottom. I'm in the press box and I'm watching their players come out after the game and stomp and spit on the star and just record videos on it. And yeah, it's probably the lowest it's ever been, man. And I was there for Temple. I was there.
That's ETSU players coming out and spitting on the star?
Yeah.
Wow. That was that kind of night. I think the thing that surprises me the most, it just had so much of Derek Mason's debut in there, right?
Exactly.
When they would pan to him, and you couldn't see this from the press box. And by the way, I don't think this is representative of him, right? I don't think Clark is sitting out there with no clue what to do, but it just was wild. He seemed like he was shell shocked from this too, as you watched him, and just the ability to come up with any kind of answer it just was not there tonight. I mean, I saw that with the Temple game. Were you on that team, or were you a year behind that?
I was on that team.
That's
I was
right.
a red shirt that year, so I
Okay.
didn't play, but I was on the sideline for that game.
Yeah, it had a lot of that feel as I watched it from TV.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's something to it where these coaches, I mean, Mason came from Stanford and was prolific defense there, constantly shut down Mariota's Oregon, so he had a lot of praise for that. Clark Lee was on Notre Dame, a highly prolific playoff team, and these guys come in. And I just don't. I think they do get shell shocked. I just think they do the work, and maybe they just don't. They just don't know what's coming, and they actually put the product out there, and they're like, "Oh, this isn't, this isn't 2014 Stanford, or this isn't 2018 Notre Dame. This is what we got now." And yeah, frankly, I don't think he's an emotionalist guy. All he constantly preaches is creating your own energy. I think he was just shell shocked.
I'm looking at some questions in the war room. Bobby 2 times wants to know how you fixed the run game. The offensive line got little to no push, and the quarterback had little time to throw.
I'll tell you how. You run and the outside zone game was hitting. Outside zone. The beautiful thing about outside zone, Chris, is you don't have to get pushed off. There was a little clip of me in the Texas Bowl or whatever that was going like quote unquote viral on Vandy Twitter. All that was we were working outside zone, outside zone, outside zone. And Ramon Davis is a back that can thrive in the outside zone. It's what they had success with today. Find what you're good at and run it, man. A defense can't just sell out to stuff. Like, there's no stacking the box against the outside zone. It's just mans on mans. And if they do, break their own, if they break their own barriers on defense and really overload the box with too many people, then you just hit them with the rollout play action. Find the things you're good at and hammer them. Absolutely hammer them. Don't just, throw them out because it's not 20, 30, 40 yards. Like, the gap scheme stuff, it's got to go, at least for the foreseeable future. It's just not effective. It's quite the opposite there. I mean, it was constant negative yardage. Things like power, things like counter, stay away from it. But the outside zone, hit it. And then once you get good at outside zone, inside zone's in the same family. That's something you can, that when we were having success as an offense under Ludwig, that's what we did. We were inside zone and outside zone, and that was it. And that opens up the run lanes too, because the linebackers have to sell out. They have to step forward, protect the run. Then you can throw the ball right over their head. Then they ease up, and then it's easier to run it. So, I mean, it's not rocket science.
A couple other questions about where was the passion. I didn't see it. I have no explanation for that. One other thing that the TV guys brought up was Elijah McAllister was off the field for a good part of the game tonight. He was a guy that not only was a guy that we thought could bring some pressure. That didn't happen. They got no sacks tonight. That is something I didn't see coming. They just didn't bring pressure like they did in practice, for one. But that's a kid that's one of your 2 leaders and your captains. What is he doing on the sidelines when he's a starter? And again, I have no answers, but that was a thing that the TV guys brought up a few times, is what's going on with that.
I mean, to answer your first question about where's the passion, I mean, I get it. I was on a team, I believe it was my senior year, so 18, where Mizzou came in at home and boat raced us. We were luckily able to edge out a bowl that season, but Mizzou boat raced us, and it was raining, and everybody left. It was like 30-0 at halftime, and I get it, man. Like, when players aren't idiots, they know when they see the writing on the wall. So obviously they, by the time it was a close game all the way through, so they shouldn't have been that checked out. And obviously the pride factor, I think it starts at the top. I think the coaches, were a little shell shocked, and that just trickled down all the way to the players, to the staff, to to whatever, and that's that's about all you can really say to that. And as far as Elijah McAllister not playing, that's what else can you say? That's gross malpractice. He should have been on that field. You're going to advertise him as your captain. He needs to be out there.
Jacob Scholl says, I was in a state of shock and maybe I didn't notice, but did we call any timeouts? I don't remember any.
Yeah, I don't remember any either. But they're probably scrambling with finding out, what to say. We can keep going down.
So are we.
Thread.
Yeah, and that's what I'm doing too. If people are wondering why I'm scrolling my phone.
If you have any technical questions, that's where I really thrive too. Like questions about stylistic matchups, plays, all that. But as far as the questions where it's like where was the passion? I mean, you saw it. That's what they brought. That was the energy we had. Here's a good one. What is off for the defense? I thought we were going to throw the kitchen sink at them. That's something we mentioned earlier too, Chris. That is good. At first, they were playing base, which is standard, right? They weren't throwing, too many fires and twists or chops of fires when the backside linebacker hits the backside C gap, and then the other lineman, they dive inside just to keep the is what basically their defense was doing to us. And I think the Vanderbilt defense thought they were playing well enough coming out to the second half to not have to resort to those things, and then they ended up getting chopped up. I mean, a lot of the run game was just total misfits. I thought the secondary was playing well in the first half. ETSU was trying to just throw these quick passes and then get run after catch, which is what we call a rack. And the DBs were, just breaking on it instantly. It was really impressive at first. But then they started, pounding the football with their gap scheme runs power, and we were misfitting the power like crazy. So we would see the pullers, so they were on the left side, and then they were pull right. So naturally, everyone else should mirror where the pullers are going. But the linebackers in the secondary would just shoot underneath the other side, and that's a huge no-no, and that was giving up massive runs, and that was chipping away at the confidence of the defense. When it comes to the pass rush, that was unbelievable. There's this tradition of Vanderbilt in the past 3 years where I D linemen take 2 steps and then just try to swap the ball down. I have no idea what that is. I wish I played against teams that did that. That is unbelievable.
I wanted to ask you, now that you've gotten to see it in a game, the offensive line, again, that was the thing we were concerned about before the season more than anything. I think that bore out tonight is a concern. What are you seeing as you're watching this? Is it lack of talent? Is it because coaches and coordinators have their own schemes and ways of doing things, right? That varies. Usually when you lose one coaching staff, the next one wants things done differently. Does that play in at all here to what you're seeing with the line?
I think there is a lack of football IQ, and that leads to a lack of confidence, and that leads to a lack of decision-making, and that leads to a lack of what we see. I think the reason they were doing well on outside zone is because it's a simple play, and it's hard to mess up your assignment. You step left and you run left as fast as you can. Easy, right? But when we start getting to the pass protections, like Steen, so Steen's guy who was right in front of him dropped, and then Steen's on nobody. So Steen just stops and freezes. He's like, uh-oh, what do I do now? Just keep kicking, and the corner would run right into your face. But when it comes to those things where they have to make decisions, or they're on their own, or they're on an island, they just don't have that, They don't have that. When there's a twist, they're not bumping each other off. It looks like they're every man for themselves out there, if that makes any sense. So I think when they simplified the playbook, these guys actually shined and looked okay. That's why I was defending them in the first quarter. But when they started, just throwing bombs and doing whatever, and they were getting no help from anybody, right? Even Ken Seals, he was starting to, not trust the pass rush, so he was just taking 20 steps back, and at that point, you can't protect anybody. So it was a triad of things. Their gap scheme, they are just simply awful at gap scheme. They were getting blown off the ball on the backside, and that's going to disrupt it every time. I think you just find the simplest things you can put with these guys. And if I'm a defense, I'm bringing every exotic thing I ever have to our team because they just falter under the pressure.
Let's see. Somebody wants to know, Brandon Kaiser wants to know, does this team look too small to you guys? I don't think that in the trenches, especially on the defensive line, they don't look like the other SEC teams yet. And they just – and that's going to take a while. There's part of this that's not on Clark Lee. Most of this is not, right? I did not like a lot of things about tonight, but the thing that I've said all off season, when people were saying this is a 6-win team, my thing all along was I think that Vegas has hit it right. And Vegas's number was 3 to 3.5. Well, you can kind of throw that out the window at this point. But my point was I still thought that there was a pretty significant talent gap. I wondered if they had enough speed in the secondary. And you know, like, for instance, Davion Davis. Really like what that kid has done. I'm not being critical of him at all, right? But the guy that's playing his spot at other schools is 310, 320. He's 285. That's just kind of where they are as a program. You've got Elijah McAllister as your star guy, and Elijah is a big, long kid. You know, he's 265. At Florida, that guy's 295. I just think they've got a long way to go there, Bruno.
I mean, it's Jim's and Joe's, you know, honestly. It's some people's frames aren't built to be, you know, at the level of this competition. And you can be serviceable as an undersized guy, like, but you know, you see, and not to bash on Warden. I called out a lot of great things Michael Warden did at center, but at the end of the day, he's also 6 foot, 6'1". You can get away with that at a few positions, but when it's every position, that's when it starts to become, you know, an issue. I mean, you nailed it on the head, Chris. These other teams have freaks at these positions, and I think there's this, you know, I don't know if it's even an explanation. I think a lot of people use that as an excuse, where it's like, oh, we're smaller, but therefore we're faster. No, these guys are 40 pounds bigger. They're also stronger, and they're also faster. Like, this is 100%. But at the same time, Chris, while that might be true that other SEC teams have it better than us, there is no reason this team should have lost to ETSU tonight. Absolutely zero. And there has to be someone that is accountable for that. You can't just blame Mason. You can't just say, this is a new team, and this team has its own identity, and this is what it is now, and someone's got to own it, or else it's not going to change.
Was Jericky Wright out there tonight? I don't think that he was.
What position?
He plays the anchor. Some days they call him a linebacker, some days they call him a DB.
I off the top of my head, I don't know. I was trying to write personal notes, and then halfway through the game, it became, you know, how am I going to explain this big picture-wise? So,
yeah, this is one of these that's going to be tough to write up. Trust me, I've written about everything there is to write, but some of these are you think you've seen it all, and then you haven't. But I don't see his name. I'm looking at the defensive box score now. I don't see him on there at all. No, wait, he is. He had one tackle tonight, which, see, I thought what happened, they were hinting at him being hurt, so I thought he'd sit out. So I don't know what happened there, but I didn't notice him tonight.
Yeah. Let's go through some of these. I want to make sure we're interacting with the people who do posts, which we appreciate. I appreciate the engagement, guys. So I'll go. I'll shift it towards trying to answer these. Should VU go Wildcat the rest of the year? I don't think so. Absolutely not, because a lot of Wildcat stuff is. And J2M said that back on the Vandy board. You shouldn't go Wildcat because mainly that's gap scheme stuff. And tonight we saw how we did with gap scheme, and it's not very good. And we did try some zone stuff from a Wildcat. I mean, Mike Wright was technically the Wildcat guy, and it was still stuffed. Next question, and this can be something you chime into, Chris. Who do you think the QB is going forward? Will we see any reshuffling with the O-line and the play calling? For me, Chris, I think. I think you'd agree with me that Ken Seals won the job. Well, from what we saw at practice, right?
Yeah, and let me stop. Full disclosure, I think everybody knows we do a podcast with Ken. So I want to get that out there, because this is one of these things that's tough to talk about when you're in that spot.
Absolutely.
I did not think Ken played well tonight. Ken looked to me like a guy who lost his confidence as the night went on. I'm still struggling with why was he put in the spot in the first place.
Exactly.
I just thought the way the week was set up was odd. And I don't know. Sometimes confidence can be a fragile thing, and he was a guy that, as I've said all camp, it was going to be tough for either of them to do much, right? And if you went to, I don't want to say like if you went to Wright, that was saying we're going to throw in the towel on the passing game. But clearly he gives you the best shot through the air. And I know that Ken had some rough games last year too, but he bounced back and he came back, right? He had some games. The Mississippi State game was a rough game for him, but he had a run of, 3 or 4 straight 300-yard passing games at the end of the year. And Ken went through a lot of stuff last year where he could have lost confidence, and he didn't. But this just tonight had a really different feel to it, and I don't know. I'm puzzled by the way the whole dialogue went during the week. And I know they're trying to win football games and they're doing the best they can, and they're not. I don't think there's a conspiracy theory in play or anything like that. I'm struggling for the words to say here, but the point is, the old saying has been if you have 2 QBs, you don't have one, and I don't know, that lends itself to a set of optics that people talk about, and a lot of times quarterback things sort of become things on their own, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm doing a good job of explaining it, but that just to me, the way the whole thing was set up, I don't really understand why they did it the way they did it.
Chris, and let me say this. I mean, let's look at football at the highest level, the National Football League. And I get people might not like this comparison, but what Super Bowl team has 2 quarterbacks like playing, even or even 70-30% snap splits? They're not. That's not how the game of football is. The game of football is a perfect game with perfect schemes played by imperfect people. Coach Ludwig, you always used to tell us this. So you have to go to the human element of things. You need a leader out there. We were lucky enough to have a guy like Kyle Shermer. And I don't care if Kyle Shermer couldn't pull it on an inside zone run. Every team in the country knew he wouldn't pull it. But we needed him out there, so we ran the plays with him anyways. You need a guy who has the team's back. And the team has his back. He has the team's back. You need that out there. I think that's something that shows when you have a result like this. Not to say that we were immune to, getting smacked, but when it's ETSU, it's also a different story. I mean, there was no reason we should have. Things just should have been so unexplainable like that.
How open do they have guys downfield tonight? Because you were there, I was not. You can see that better from TV, or better from being there than I can from being on TV. But what did you think about in terms of throwing lanes? What did they have there, both those guys?
They weren't very open. I mean, I think it's because they practice so much of this, close, flat screen style of throwing. They're just not like the downfield routes seem like a secondary thing. And a guy like Chris, listen, I think Chris is still an impressive player even after tonight. He's not going to be a guy that burns down the field. He's going to be a 50-50 ball guy. So what you have to do is try and isolate this guy. It's what Baylor did to us. They knew Juwan was hurt, so they would isolate him. Take any semblance of zone away. They would go trips on the other side, and then they would put their highest speeded guy on Juwan, and then just throw it over a single. That's something you could game plan with Chris. But I think this team just is still trying to find itself. They're not at that evolution yet where they can, start singling out guys on their team. They're trying to figure out if they can run a run play. So they're just not there yet. And as far as like these basic routes, they're not getting, it's not like there were 50 people downfield and the quarterbacks just weren't throwing the ball. I mean, we were getting locked up.
I'm looking at a stat on the official stat sheet here. It's got targets. Will Shepard got targeted 17 times tonight, which I'm not shocked that he was the most targeted receiver. Ken seemed to trust him in fall camp a lot. Cam Johnson had 9. It didn't seem like it. I thought he just kind of disappeared from the offense from times, and I don't mean that as indictment on Cam. To me, when you're not doing things with the ball, I don't know, maybe a good way is to get the ball to your most dependable receiver. Maybe that's not fair. 9 targets, it just didn't seem like it to me. I know some of them came late.
9 targets with 31 yards is, it just says a lot about the program and their scheme. And what they're drawing up. I mean, they're just expecting these guys to hopefully, they're just hoping that these short passes break, and that's just simply not the case. Especially after we're having so many issues of playing behind and with penalties. I think, I don't know. I guess I don't want to say talent's an issue, but whatever they were doing in the passing game just simply isn't working, Chris.
Here's another thing. They had no sacks tonight.
Oh my gosh! And one thing you mentioned, guess who wasn't on the field a lot of the time? Their team captain, outside linebacker Elijah McAllister, who was getting pressure quite a bit during the practices, at least the parts we're allowed to report on, I'd say.
Well, and Alex Williams was not out there much. They did not credit him with a tackle. I could have sworn he got one on a 4th down stop with Clifton maybe as an assist, but they didn't give it to him. Maybe I was seeing things, but that's a spot where he's got the natural talent to do it. That doesn't mean that you should be on the field always. The coaches know things that we don't about picking up this and picking up that and whatever. But that was if you're looking for guys who I think have the talent to play at this level, who could be answers, I think he's one that I'd circle. Again, that doesn't always mean you should be on the field, but that's one they need to tap into after a night like this.
Do you want to talk about? Can we talk about some of the good that happened tonight, Chris?
Go for it.
Did you see that we made a 50-plus yard kick? That was the start. That was the start off the game. I was actually kind of hyped, Chris. That's 53 yards. You know what the Vanderbilt record is?
I believe it's 55.
55. We almost, So after the last year's struggles, I was like, oh my god, so we have, we lose the ball on offense. We have to punt it. I'm like, that was the first drive, and I was like, okay, sometimes you just don't score first. It happens, and then we punted it down to the 1. I was like, okay, a special teams execution, great, and then we end up flubbing again on offense, but we execute again on special teams. For what it was worth, special teams answered the call. Only 1/3 of the phase of the game. People were making jokes about it. Special teams can decide the winner of the game when offense and defense are going back and forth. But when you only have special teams, you see what happens. But I mean, that was at least a positive. Specialist showed up.
Yeah, Harrison Smith was pretty good. He had the one punt that was 53 yards and went out of bounds at the 1. Went out of bounds at the 1. So there's that.
And that's about it.
And that's about it.
I thought Chris Pierce played pretty well when he was targeted. He had one over-the-shoulder catch he could have probably executed better on, but he had that touchdown taken away by our tackle being down the field on a pass play. So
okay, wind me through that one. Because that was a run pass option. I think it looked like that's what they said on TV. Was that Tyler's fault, or who's to blame in that spot?
It's a hard thing to say. I'll say, this is what I'll say. When they first started, the RPO was first introduced into football. It was no holds barred. You could run 5 yards down the field as an O-lineman. They weren't calling it. About 2 to 3 years ago, they really started hammering down on it. If you're locked up with a defensive lineman, like say I'm playing guard and there's a 3 technique, and I drive him 4 yards, they're not going to call that. But if you're on air and you're going up to a linebacker, they will call that, and I think rightfully so. So when you're on air, you just have to shuffle or maybe go back against the zone and help. You have to treat it like a pass pro, especially on the run pass option. I don't necessarily think Tyler was even at fault for that because it is a run option, but you have to take it slow. But I imagine he's not being coached to take it slow. He's being coached to, all right, take one step, then go up the field. So, well, it's kind of you never see it really called, but of course it was called on a Vanderbilt touchdown tonight.
There's some talking here about quarterbacks reading progressions and things like that. Looking at one receiver, do they have time to get through progressions? It's what I saw all of fall camp. It's what I was worried about with him, is that this would play out. I did not expect it against ETSU, but that's what we saw darn near every time we went out there, was what you saw tonight. quarterbacks running for their lives, just not having a lot of time to process stuff downfield. And I'm not saying that the quarterbacks played great or that they weren't at fault at times, but as a whole, it just is. It just seemed like every snap was the same thing. Every time they dropped back, there were linebackers coming to bust everything up before they had a chance to stand in there and really get a good look at what was downfield. Maybe that is me simplifying what went on, but again, I felt like I was watching the same movie that we saw all of fall camp.
Yeah, I mean, things roll downhill quick. So Ken gets legitly pressured early. So he's like, okay, I'm just gonna back. So I'm gonna take because an important part of an offensive lineman's pass protection is knowing the launch point of the quarterback. Certain protections, it's a 5-step drop or a 3-step drop or a 7-step drop, depending on if you have tight ends or running backs in. So I think they were just doing from the gun, 3 steps from the gun, and that gives you your aiming point. Well, the offensive lineman ended up picking up a twist game, but you're taught to protect the inside more than the outside. So the guy runs outside, and Ken is so worried because he already just got hit that he starts backing up. So now one's the O-line's fault, and then one's Ken's fault, and then they're just not on the same page, and that just happens all night. It just basically becomes a guessing game between 11 different people. Okay, are we going to play how we practice, or am I going to have to improvise? That's the struggle they were on. They were just not on the same page. That's why you practice. I mean, you practice so you have these rules and you stick to them. Even if it doesn't work one time, you look at the guy and you're like, hey, that's my bad, I'll fix it. There's no talking about it, it looks like, out there. I mean, these guys are just, it's anarchy. It's 11 guys just, trying to make something happen.
Okay, 2 things that popped up in the chat that are of interest. Amir Abdul-Rahman did not have a target tonight, which I would not have expected. Yeah. Neither did Logan Kyle. And then the question about Ben Bresnahan. Ben got hurt late and went out. I don't remember if he returned. I think we were probably both checked out by that point. But I would hate to see him be down for any length of time.
I mean, we're going to need every cat we can get, Chris. We need every single man on board that's willing to play and try and improve. And the more that go down, I mean, it definitely doesn't help. It's not a good thing when people get injured. And especially at the end of a game like this, it's talk about truly insult to injury. That's exactly what it is. I'm surprised Amir didn't get any receptions either. I mean, we have. Tell me if I'm wrong. We have a decent receiver room, right? Like, how can this be so abysmal?
Well, everything is relative to what's in front of you, right? We talked about the defensive line group dominating through a lot of fall camp. I think now you have your context. The DBs did not have great nights. The guy that I thought would be their best corner particularly did not play well. I don't know. All you can see teams do in fall camp is go against each other, and you suspend judgment. The thing that I always say is I try to, when I'm judging a guy, I kind of go off what we saw last when they were playing other teams and find reasons to conclude that they're otherwise. And sometimes you can find them legitimate, and sometimes you have to wait and see them play somebody else. And unfortunately, first glimpse at somebody else was not really kind.
Sorry, Chris, I just got emotional real quick. Sorry to everybody else. I'm also reading the thread, trying to come up with, answers to our issues and answers to our questions. Can I ask you something, Chris?
Sure.
You were saying earlier, obviously, and I'm sorry to just, I feel like this needs to be talked about. How much of this is on, Clark, Coach Lee? I mean, because what he did inherit is a dumpster fire. That much is true. We know that, But is it? Do we give it pass? I'm of the opinion still that we really can't judge him for, like, a true Clark Lee product for quite some time. I don't want to be like one of those programs, Chris, that have a night like tonight and we're like, we should fire him now. I really don't think that's the way. I mean, even after Mason's first year, totally abysmal, right? We started build. Next year was 4 wins. Next year was a bowl game. It started to really look up, right? So, what are your thoughts on that? What do we expect out of Coach Leaf at this point?
Um, Here's my thing. I'm not a big fan of. Well, I am sometimes. I'm not. Some people say that you need to give a coach 2 or 3 years regardless. I think sometimes I don't agree with that. I think with Mason, things were so disjointed that it was not going to work. I think he had too far to come. I don't believe that with Clark. The thing that I've been saying all year, and you've seen me say it in the War Room, and you've heard it on podcasts, I said, and you don't want to like tamp down people's enthusiasm before the season and wag a finger in their face and say, this team stinks, and you've got nothing to be happy about, because that's the point of being a fan, right? Is fans want something to get excited about and look forward to. But you've heard me when people have asked me about wins and losses, I've said I think that Vegas is about right, and Vegas has had them 3.5. I think everybody thought tonight would be 1, and I did too. So now 3 looks like 10 all of a sudden after tonight. But the reason that I pumped the brakes on it is I've said the same thing over and over. I did not feel like they had SEC level speed in the secondary. I didn't feel like they had SEC level athletes up front. Again, I think they've gotten better there, or they appeared to in practice. Now, after tonight, who knows? And I didn't feel like, as much as people have said, the wide receiving room is good and they'll be really good. I'm like, come on, let's watch LSU and Alabama and Florida and compare these guys with those guys, and then let's talk. But, that said, the thing I've also said the whole time is I never imagined Franklin would do what he would do in 2011 either. So there's always a little bit of a middle ground. Well, tonight there didn't seem to be any middle ground. I think 90% of it's talent, at least. Now the penalties and the penalties and the discipline are the things that give me cause for concern, and also just the every time they pan to Clark on the sideline, that look of that we've seen out of other coaches, like I don't know how to fix this, right? Franklin didn't have that look so much, and it's probably not fair to bring Franklin up because he was the unicorn, but I don't know. I'd always thought that the talent was going to be a big inhibitor. When people were saying 5-6 wins, I'm just thinking you're out of your mind. But I thought that there would be some improvement. I mean, let's face it, they did almost win a couple of SEC games last year. Mississippi State was there for the taking, so it's not.
And them look close too. Yeah,
so I don't. To me, 1-11 didn't seem right either. Now it might be, but I thought that's the thing. I've always thought it was a talent issue. I never saw them getting. I said if he got to 4 wins, he ought to be coach of the year. They're not going to get to 4 wins, but it felt to me like there was some middle ground in between there where they could win a little bit and look some competitive in some more games. Frankly, after looking at tonight, the talent's not there to do that, but the coaches didn't help them tonight either. I think that's plenty fair to say.
Yeah, I think they're coaching like they're at their old programs and they're not really adapting to, in which might I'm not sure what the right path is. Do you just force your way onto the players until you eventually get players that can fill that role, or I've always thought that good coaching was adapting to the players you have at the moment. I guess that's the big question that this coaching staff's going to have to. Can they just use the excuse like we don't have our guys yet? Well, what happens when you do have your guys? And then we see this again. That's a time investment for a fan, Chris. I'm always thinking about the fans because they're the people who we get the energy from. Can you ask them to invest 5 or 6 more years into what we saw tonight? It's a tough thing, man, especially after you've lived it for a long time.
Okay, there's a couple of really good points in the chat. Fred Holtz made a bunch of them, and I have not called him out till now. He says, why was the tackling so bad? I thought Lee would have done some work there. Man, I'm completely baffled by that one because tell me if I'm wrong here. We both went to a lot of practices. I
Yes.
did not see bad tackling show up once.
I didn't see bad tackling in the first quarter of this game. I thought they were playing really well. I think the situation just got to the guys, and there was no, I think they lost their composure and then lost their training. They just reverted to high school shenaniganery where they were diving with their shoulders and their heads. They were like, hopefully this takes the guy out. They weren't form tackling, swarming to the ball because they were down like 10, 15 to ETSU in the third quarter. So they're just like, I guess what I was doing wasn't working, so I'm not going to trust him. I'm just going to go out there and do my own thing, and hopefully that does work. I think that's part of it.
I think this team lost a lot of confidence as the night went on. That's how it looked to me from
Absolutely.
TV.
Absolutely. I mean, the
Go
offense
ahead.
lost confidence almost instantly.
Brandon Kaiser said a couple of things, too, that I've agreed with. It says talent and coaching also. The offensive coordinator hire was a concern day one. Clark may find himself mirroring Mason in another way by replacing some coaches. Yeah, I mean, look, one thing that I said from the beginning that I had a concern about is you looked at them. They hired a first-time head coach. They hired a first-time offensive coordinator, and they hired a defensive coordinator who hadn't been one in a while and hadn't been one at this level. Man, that's a lot in year one, even if you're Alabama, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Chris. I mean, it's. And I think we're going to see a lot of these guys. I mean, it's a lot to judge off one game, but it's kind of something I feel safe saying is you're going to see a lot of these guys be quote unquote the fall guy, and which it might be deserved too. I mean, think about it. We had Coach Durrell, who, frankly, did it one way, and his way might have worked at some places, but then we brought in Coach Ludwig right after, and his way was very effective for what worked for us. So, I mean, this is just trying to. You can't fit circle pegs with square into a square hole, right? It just can't be done. So I think it might just be a year of trial and error, seeing where the deficiencies are and correcting those deficiencies, whether it be people who are employed, players, and whoever. One thing's for sure though, Clark Lee will be the head coach. He's got to be he's got to be he's got to have the leadership enough to make those decisions that are best for the team.
Matt Hearn makes a good point. Is it on Clark Lee for the team losing confidence since he didn't talk to players on the sidelines? I think a lot of that's got to be on the coaches, right? I mean, when they just
Yes.
didn't have any answers, the thing you're thinking in the back of your head, I was thinking this, like they'll come out and they'll play a better second half. They'll do something different. And said it got worse as it went on. And to me, I don't know. I don't know what the answer was, but I don't think they had it tonight.
No, I mean the coach. Listen, these are young men that trust that these coaches go into these men's homes and tell their parents and their families, we're going to take care of your son, and we're going to lead him, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. We're going to talk about NFL, pro football. We're going to get him an education, and then like, don't say you're going to be the leader, and then get out there and just be like, why didn't you handle it on your own, kid? Coaching is an extremely tough job. That's why they get paid big bucks to do it this level. So when your team's going down like this, and a guy has like 4 penalties, and you're just numb to it. Of course, people are looking at you how to react. When I have 5-year-olds in my judo class, and there's a 13-year-old acting up, the 5-year-old is going to think acting up is okay. When I don't just discipline them or anything like that. I mean, it was just one thing after another. I think the certain stoicism, quote unquote, really backfired. Because you're looking to someone for answers who's in charge. At the end of the day, the coaches are, choose who to play, who to call. I mean, I've been ripped by a million people in my lifetime. I just didn't see that today.
Anything else you got? I know we've been at this for about an hour.
I know. Well, they might
You'll
kick me out
probably
here
get.
soon.
I'm surprised you're not kicked out of the press box yet, because they closed it
The
before
press
too
conference,
long.
the press conference took a long time, so I think they're giving us a lot of leeway to
Yeah.
do our work, which I appreciate. Yeah, so just answering the last few questions because I want to make sure I interact with the board as much as possible. Dor Salem says, "Are there any players you thought did really well?" You can't say anybody who did really well in a game like this. I thought Chris Pierce did what he could with what he was given, and other than Harrison and the kicker, that's about it. Let me make sure there's anything else, Chris, and that'll be it. Yeah, I think that's it for today, Chris. I mean, we'll be here. We'll be here. We'll be doing these shows, and we're gonna try and talk through the madness because someone's got to do it. Because the fans deserve better than this, all right? And if no one is going to answer or explain what's going on, I'll do my best to do it. So, and I know you'll help me along the way.
Well, I apologize that when we started the show, we did not have any video for a while. It took me 10, 15 minutes to correct that. So in case you're wondering what happened, that was on me. But anyway, thank you for listening. And we'll have something at Vandy Sports this week. This is not what we thought it would be. But in any case, thank you guys for listening to the Vandy Sports postgame show. He's Bruno Reagan. I'm Chris Lee. We'll catch you again really soon.